Yo, this video is pretty scary, so watch at your own risk. Ever seen this video before? Well, you probably have. This video was made by... Now, in this video, Olivier is turning himself into a creature slash cryptic. He's using clay, and I'm assuming a bunch of other art stuff there to turn himself into a monster, quote unquote. But this video also has a creepypasta behind it. Now, the creepypasta used this video, but it's very distorted in a way. And the creepypasta's name is Gateway of the Mind. And I gotta say, I love this kind of creepypasta. It's just one of my favorite genres. But let's take a closer look into this creepypasta. In 1983, a team of scientists conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists have theorized that if you cut off all human senses, they would have a way to connect to God. They believe that the five senses clouded our awareness of God, and without them, a human could actually establish contact with God by thought. An elderly man who claimed to have nothing left to live for was the only test subject to volunteer to purge him of all of his senses. The scientists performed a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connected to the brain was surgically severed. Although the test subject remained fully muscular function, he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel, with no possible way to communicate with or even sense the outside world. He was alone with his thoughts. Scientists monitored him as he spoke aloud with his state of mind in jumbled, slurred sentences that he couldn't even hear. After 4 days, the man claimed to be hearing hushed, unintelligible voices in his head. Assuming it was an onset of psychosis, the scientists paid little attention to the man's concern. 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking with him, and even more, that he could communicate back. The scientists were intrigued but were not convinced until the subject started naming dead relatives of the scientist. He repeated personal information to the scientists that only their dead spouses and parents would have known. At this, a sizable portion of the scientists have left the study. After weeks of concerning with his thoughts, the subject became distressed, saying the voices were overwhelming in every waking moment. His consciousness was bombarded by hundreds of voices that refused to leave him alone. He frequently threw himself against the wall, trying to elicit pain response. He begged the scientists for a sedatives so he could escape the voices by sleeping. This tactic worked for 3 days until he started having severe night terrors. The subject repeatedly said that he could see and hear the deceased in his dreams. 1 day later, the subject began to scream and claw his non-functional eyes, hoping to sense something in the physical world. The hysterical subject now said that the voices of the dead were deafening and hostile, speaking of hell and the end of the world. At one point he yelled, "No heaven, no forgiveness," for 5 straight hours. He continually begged to be killed, but the scientists were convinced that he was close to establishing contact with God. Another day, the subject could no longer form coherent sentences. Seemingly mad, he started to bite off chunks of his flesh from his arm. The scientists rushed into the test chamber and restrained him to a table so he cannot kill himself. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggling and screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling as tear drops silently streaked across his face. For 2 weeks, the subject has been manually rehydrated due to constant crying. Eventually, he turned his head and, despite his blindness, made focused eye contact with the scientists for the first time in the study. He whispered, "I have spoken with God, and he has abandoned us." His vital signs stopped. There was no apparent cause of death. So yeah, that was the creepypasta. Definitely one of my favorites. I know I stuttered in a lot of the things. As you can tell, I'm sick. But I really want to get this video out there and stuff. I know I said I would upload a lot often, but no. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you hopefully sooner, not by next year. So see ya.